Okay, let's continue on from where we actually left off. Now, what we want to do first of all is to take a good look at the reference before we do anything else. Now, I'm looking at the reference board, which is going to be included in the project files for PureRef. It's an amazing software. I recommend you use it. And also, I do have a little bit of reference here in form of an arm and a lot more other references for hands, which are also going to be included, of course. Okay, let's open up PureRef again, and what I want to do is get in the bony landmarks for the legs themselves, first of all. Okay, but for us to do this, I recommend actually attaching the upper part of the body to the lower one and having a single mesh. The way we can actually do this is, of course, merge it down. And if you notice, it was at the top. We just have to move it down so it's right below the legs, right above the legs, I'm sorry, and we press on merge down. Okay, this will make it a single mesh. And what we need to do is to attach the upper part to the lower one is, of course, control drag in the viewport. And you can see that we have a seamless mesh. Okay. Now let's start with putting in the bony landmarks. And again, let's look at the reference. About the bony landmarks themselves. How I usually start is just put in a little plan on how it actually looks, how the muscles connect. Let's change the alpha here. So just have a good incision. Don't worry about the bumps, this and that. We can clean up always. We just need to get a good idea of what we're actually doing with this first. And what I want to do is actually get the calves right in here and continue with everything else as a bony structure covered with fascia. I think it should give us a desired result. If not, we can always change up, redesign, because this is still quite into the realm of concepting. We're not looking at anything final at the moment. We can always change. That's the point I want to get across. Just shape it, look at your reference. Make sure to look at it from all sides, making sure it looks good, because of course 3D models are actually used in games, in films, and they usually have to look good from all the angles. Well, maybe not in films, depending on the model you're actually making, because some of them may only be shown from a certain angle, a certain amount of exposure. But in games, if you're doing it for games, you never know what angle your model is going to be shown at. So just make sure that it's, well, not perfect, but presentable from all the angles. Okay, time to move back to the stylus. Okay, let's get back here and build the bony landmarks themselves. Let's say clay buildup. Let's cut down on this. Again, look at the reference. Some of you may not need to look at the reference much, depending on what mental library you actually possess from experience, but it's always good to use reference. Don't try to reinvent what already exists, unless you want to put your own spin on it. Basically, don't try to reinvent the wheel, basically. That's what I want to say. So you can already see that we're getting there. It already looks like a bony protrusion. And we can allow ourselves to somewhat detail the calves. Now don't worry about the volume, the shape at the moment. Just get the general silhouette and we can always change it. If it's too bulky, if it's too thin, no problem. We have our clay build-up brush. Okay, perfect. Let's get in here, pull it back from all angles. If you hold Alt, click, and move your mouse back, you can move along the normal. And let's get this done quickly as possible, because the next step would be to build the hands, work on the shape of the body a bit, and then on head, horns, and overall concept. And after that, we would actually go in and retopologize, add some accessories, plan the accessories themselves. So the fun is just beginning. So stay with me. Okay. Let's move this out of the place. Let's shape the butt. Oh, I think it's just a tiny bit too pointy, but that may also not be a bad thing, depending on how the overall look will be. But let's get rid of the arms for the moment. You can see that we do have a problem here. It looks like his butt cheeks are looking up. Always want this up straight. Move this out, and let's move down to these. Now again, I'm not sure what I want to do with these, but first I want to clean these. So Control Shift, clip curve. Let's turn off the perspective. Forget about that. So we get a clean cut. Can almost always smooth those back. Redye mesh. And let's do split the poly groups, but not in this manner. Let's go into poly groups, group visible, and what we can actually do is Control Shift, select rectangle. Well, actually, let's do the select lasso. And now let's go to poly groups and group visible, much cleaner group. And what this allows us to do is to isolate seamlessly the upper and the lower parts of the body. We'll also do these as we need to, depending on what details we're actually working on all over the body. You'll see that basically. You'll see me doing that a lot, usually. Well, but every project's different. But it's a really good habit to pick up. Let's do 6, and let's do 11, test it, a much cleaner one. Okay, now let's get the stylus in. I'm just doing a little bit of cleanup in here, just to get an overall idea of what we're doing, and then we're going to start thinking about detailing as well. no Alt to take away the extra we added. Make sure to use the pressure sensitivity in here. If you don't have a stylus, that's no reason to stop. Stylus makes your work much higher quality in the end, but there's no reason you can't continue without one and get an amazing result. So don't use that as an excuse, please. Pretty much looks good. Now let's do the knees. We need to move them around a bit, just a bit, because I don't like the positioning. We don't want him to look crippled when animated, so we better fix that now. Let's go back to clay buildup and detail the back of the leg. Again, all you have to do is to get these details in. Just find reference for whatever you're actually trying to do or mimic from the real world. I mean, legs, there's nothing problematic that you need to draw or anything like that. I mean, you can just find it on Google, find it in an encyclopedia for anatomy. You can get everything basically these days. I just want to make the knees look more interesting with extra details. I want the kneecap very exposed, flattish looking. Now what I'm doing is I'm not picking up the pen from the stylus itself. I'm keeping it on there just to get an even layering of mass on top of the basic shapes that we've built out with move brush and so on. And what we actually are doing is putting detail on top to define the muscles themselves a little bit more. And at some point it can get boring and repetitive. even if you're doing it yourself, or even if you're looking it up in the video. So please just take a coffee, take a break for 5-10 minutes, go straight back to it, do this, try, fail, do it again, identify what was the problem. If something just doesn't look right, just get up, ask a friend what he thinks, be very friendly towards criticism. If you get a criticism like, oh, his face doesn't look realistic, doesn't look human, I mean, obviously it's a demon, right? But regarding how cool it looks on a scale of 1 to 10, how presentable, how interesting, I mean, anyone can actually tell you basically what to add, what to take away. And also, it looks amazing. Comments, they don't help a lot as well. So constructive criticism goes a long way on what you're actually doing. Send it out to 10 of your friends. They can tell you what to change. What you actually develop after doing this a lot is actually, even when you play games, watch movies, you notice that those little details that other people have done in already finished work, and you can actually start applying that to your assets as well. And the best part is that you, as a person who is, for example, doing this, just starting out or learning, I mean, you think that people whose work you've seen, whose look looks ideal with no flaws, I mean, you actually start noticing the flaws, start noticing the problems in a finished piece, even from big studios that come out to the world, and they do look amazing. But basically, pros know when to stop, when to call it a day, and how to improve on it. So you should actually get the same mentality out of there. And just don't give up. If you don't know how something looks, just go in and look for reference. Try to sculpt it separately. Try to look at people if you're doing something realistic and you can find it in the world. Now I'm looking to get a certain effect out of here, but we'll have to just move around. Let's just see how everything reads in terms of shapes from the far and close, and we'll get there. And here, maybe he has an extra muscle going down. Maybe there's just a big muscle sitting on top. Now, I'm making this up. I'm just looking at what may actually look good. You're always free to make everything look functional and interesting to look at as well. Rig doesn't care if the muscle goes here or there, unless you're trying to go full realistic. You actually need the muscle structure. The rig is going to move under it with the muscles, the morph targets. That's a different story, depending on the technical stuff you're actually doing. But in these cases, such as if this is for a game, this and that, you have artistic liberty, especially for personal projects. And it actually stops being boring as well. But you do have to ground everything in reality for it to have a believable look and an interesting spin. This butt crack is bothering me. We need to make it a bit deeper for it to look less mushy. But let's take over the legs first. Believe me, we'll get there. Let's make the brush smaller and get into a little bit more detail in this. I mean, usually I don't go into this much detail at this stage, but these legs are just asking for it. They look too cool. Okay. Let's end this video here, and let's continue. See you on the next.